Hey guys, this is the 2020 Audi R8 Performance Decennium. They only built 222 of these worldwide and only 50 are in the US. And I am partnering with Omaze to give one of these away in a sweepstakes. You can take it home fully tax-free, delivered to your door with $20K in the trunk. The proceeds from this sweepstakes benefit a cause called DoSomething.org, which turns online activism into real-world activism. And you can sign up with any number of causes that you want to support, and it'll tell you how to make real-world change. It's a great cause. So hit the link in the description and find out how you can enter and take this very R8 home with you. Now enjoy this video. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to what should be a very interesting video. This is a 2003 BMW M5 in Alpine White, one of 139 made in that color of the 10,000 total E39 M5s that came to the United States between 2000 and 2003. This car is owned by my friend Paul Zuckerman, who you may know from the Spike's Car Radio podcast. He is a collector of fine vintage machines and a personal injury lawyer here in LA. So if you're hurting and someone else is to blame, give this dude a call. He drove up to the Malibu kitchen in this car the other day, and I was blown away. This is the cleanest E39 M5 I have seen since literally they were being sold new. This car has 28,000 original miles on it, and Paul has owned it twice. It's been through EAG, Enthusiast Auto Group, twice, and Paul owned it twice. This is his second time around owning this car. It is so mint that I can still see the original grain in the leather on the thick-rimmed steering wheel. It's so mint that this brushed metal is not scratched up at all. It's ridiculously mint, you guys. This feels like a brand new car, and I was in a couple of these when they were brand new because my friends' dads had them when I was like graduating high school. That's when these came out, 2000. And so the E39 M5, 2000 to 2003, it's an enthusiast car for a reason. It's the first V8 in an M car. It's a 4.9 liter V8 making 394 horsepower and 370 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. Top speed 180. Now in 2000, this was like the first European sedan to ever have 400 horsepower. The fact that this thing had 400 horsepower, that was a big deal. This car was a huge deal at the time that it came out. Manual transmission is your only option. It's got that VVTi, the variable valve timing, on both the intake and the exhaust side. And as the cars, the production run of the M5 went on from 2000, 01, 02, 03, the cars did get mild improvements. For 01, it got a valve for to stop the Vanos accumulation. It got new piston rings. It got a different engine oil, widened O2 passages for less carbon buildup. And then in 02, it got a quieter diaphragm spring in the clutch pressure plate, angelized headlights, the updated steering wheel with the thicker rim, gray gauges, and the better MMI. And this is an 03, so it's got all that stuff. In the year 2018, according to Haggerty, a number one condition E39 M5 went from $45,000 to $70,000 average. That's in 1 year. EAG, Enthusiast Auto Group, they've been on my podcast before, Eric Schmidt has. They are known for sourcing really good examples of cars, refurbishing them as good as they can be, and then selling them for all the money. So if I had to guess, this car is probably like 100 G's. It's a huge money car. So let's see how it drives. I notice immediately about driving this car that are no longer with BMWs. Clutch feel, exceptional. The rumble of that V8 engine and the engagement of it when you set off. that the fact that I can just let that clutch out at basically 1,000 RPM and just move off with that little bit of that low-endy grunt, that's beautiful for driving in traffic. The clutch itself is really light. The steering is weighted just brilliantly. It's really got a direct feel, but without being overly sharp or feeling like it changes a whole lot throughout the corner. It's very consistent. I love the fact that it's got a little bit of body roll. Body roll has become the enemy in the Nürburgring era, and I don't think that necessarily is the right way forward. As a road car, some body roll is good. It doesn't feel like I have a lack of grip. It just moves a bit, and it helps me. The body roll actually helps me transfer the weight, because I can feel the weight moving around in a bit more of a pronounced way. This car's 3,700 pounds, which is 600 pounds lighter than the current M5. Of course, it doesn't have turbos, it doesn't have the fast shifting gearbox, all-wheel drive, all that kind of stuff that makes the new M5 crazy fast. But once the car is going that fast, does it even really matter? It's just bragging rights. Can you, enthusiast, really get from point A to point B quicker in the new M5 than this one? When that happens, when the cars get too fast, you gotta go for the sensations, right? The sensations is what you need. And the sensations of driving the E39 M5 are unavailable from the current BMW lineup at all. And I have to stop again, because this guy doesn't understand what it means to let an enthusiast buy. Actually, he might turn. There's a turn off here. We'll hold our breaths. This car's had a couple of little modifications done to it over the course of its life, not done by Paul, possibly done at EAG. It's got a Dynon intake, a Dynon catback exhaust, a Dynon ECU. It also has upgraded, I don't know if they're upgraded, but they're refreshed shocks, the Dynon strut tower brace, and Dynon sway bars. So none of these things change the M5's character really in any way. They just liven up the sensations that were already there. Alright, now we have a road. Here we go. Fortunately, brand new Pilot Sport 4S tires. The 18-inch wheels. I love how this engine feels when you rev it out. I love keeping it between 4,000 and 7,000 RPM. I love the way that when I get onto the brakes, I can actually feel those front tires loading up. I like how when I actually turn in the wheel, you can feel that weight transfer over to the side a little bit. This also has, I believe, a Dynon short throw shifter. I don't know if it's Dynon brand for sure, but it is nice. Alex Roy's M5 had a Kellner short throw shifter in it that I hated. This one is much better. Really good, really direct shift engagement. It was a little, not crunchy, that's the wrong word, a little stiff when it was ice cold, but 10-15 miles of driving, it warmed up and smoothed right out. Oh, this is a very kind truck. Will let me buy. Thank you. We'll give him the old what have you. No, I don't think that was for me, but I'll take it. This car has such the right amount of power, weight, and size to engage with 3 pedals and a stick. It would be hard to overdrive this car. Oh, cyclist. If you're a good driver, you can really engage with each of these things at exactly the right amount of focus level. Up at the top of the power band, when you're really making that 394 horsepower, it goes good. It's got these really beautiful svelte proportions. You know, and 3,700 was a little heavy at the time, but now, I mean, this thing feels like a featherweight. Feels like the right size. you know, it's roughly the same size as the current 3 Series. It's not a huge car. It's really easy to Rev-Match. The sound of the engine is fantastic out that Dynon exhaust. It's a real joy to drive this. I mean, it's a real joy. It moves around, but in this certain kind of way that's very interesting. Predictable is the word. It's super predictable. Brakes are, I mean, they're street pads and fluid, so a little soft maybe, but good for 99% of the time. We're gonna go in this sort of funky section here that's gonna have some really tight stuff and see how it does in the really tight stuff. This is one of the funkiest sections of road around. I'm not sure it's ideal for an M5, but we're gonna make it work. It's a really nice amount of steering input. So many things about this make sense. How good is his V8 engine? He asked himself. So good that in 2015 I test drove a Turner Motorsports Z4 GT3 race car, and it had this engine. BMW's race cars were powered by this engine for 12, maybe 13 years after BMW stopped making this car. They were not using the M3's V8. They were using this V8, or a variant of it. Oh, how about that? It just occurred to me. Traction control's on. Let's turn that off. And sport mode wasn't even on. We had sport. I remember when Paul told me this morning, he said, make sure you put sport mode on. Take off traction. Let's see what we feel different here. Will it be a tighter throttle response? You know, a Dynon tune, oh, it is. It's a substantially better throttle response. I have been missing out this entire time. Oof. That was an ugly shift, and I am sorry. With a naturally aspirated V8, there's only so much power you can unleash from a tune, right? You're not going to gain 100 horsepower like you would with a turbo engine just by doing a tune, but you can really improve the throttle response, the aggressiveness of the engine, the way it tips in, and so that's really what the tune has done here. I like that there's basically no overrun. When you get off the pedal, you instantly get, you instantly get engine braking. It's right there. Are these guys chilling? No? I'm gonna go right. No, you go ahead. That bass note, it's not a drone, but it's a fantastic bass note. I really like that. This is a very tight section here, with a lot of change in camber, so it really will demonstrate how balanced this thing is over the ups and the downs. Tire squeal there at the front. 28,000 miles. There's no creaks, there's no squeaks. It's incredible. I mean, you just right off that top there. Interesting gearing. You know, it feels geared like it's geared really short until you rev it to redline and you realize, oh, if I actually use all the power band, it's not geared that short. If you're just driving it around, you know, in the city, you're shifting it like 3 or 4 or whatever, you go, wow, this thing, I'm in 4th already? What's that about? But then you rev it out to 7 and you go, oh, okay, that makes more sense. And then you remember that the engine likes that. Titans. I mean, 3,700 pound M5. She dancing pretty good. There's so much to like here. Look at this, changing camber. It's agile, baby. Incredibly agile. Very, very good. Very, very good. Oof. There it is. That's fantastic, huh? Wow. So look, I mean, what is the takeaway? In period, this came out before the RS6 and the supercharged E55, and in my opinion, this is probably a better car than both, all things being equal, than the Mercedes or the Audi. They, in more recent years, knew I like the C63 the best, or I'm sorry, the E63S wagon the best, and the new M5 doesn't really do anything for me. Now, you've got $100,000 to spend on a sports sedan. Do you go out and you buy a brand new M3 competition? Do you go out and you buy a brand new C63? Do you go out and you buy a brand new RS4? Do you go out and you buy a 16-year-old BMW E39 M5? Oh, man, me, I would having driven the newest M3s and stuff like that, I think I'd rather own this, frankly. I'd buy a really nice one of these, save some money for maintenance, and I would drive this happily. I think as far as an engaging, luxurious, well-made, appropriately sized, appropriately spaced sports sedan, I'm not sure this has been beaten. I mean, this is fucking amazing, this car. I love this thing. It rules. I mean, if I had the money to spend, I could really see why you'd want to get the best example of something like this, start from there, and then keep it working and moving from there, as opposed to buying a cheap one and then finding who knows what, and it still won't even be as nice as this. So it's an argument for buying the best. So thank you to my good friend Paul Zuckerman for letting me have a go in this thing. Shout out to EAG. I'll put the link to their appearance in my podcast in the video if you want to hear Eric from EAG's philosophy on BMWs. Thank you to all you for watching. Enjoy yourself.